Well, we live in an age of technology, which is nothing new to the younger generation, but to those of us a little bit older, it has really opened up some doors that we did not have in our early days. Of course, Satan uses technology, and those of evil-minded purposes use technology for things that are not holy and not good. But we can use that same technology, however, for that which is holy and for that which is good, and that is for the spreading of the gospel of the kingdom. There are a lot of people in this world, almost 8 billion people now in this world. And so that means it is harder and harder and harder for us to reach each person. Maybe in the good providence of God, He's allowed technology to come in as the population then increases, that we might use it in a way to help reach the masses. And that we can have one-on-one Bible studies with people all the way around the world instantaneously today by looking into monitors and conversing with other people. Brother Jonathan Burns is going to tell us a little bit about all of that. I don't know of anyone any more qualified than Brother Jonathan. And when it comes to technology, if you went over there and looked at his display, I think he built a computer that's about this big that he plugs in a flash drive, and that's what's running everything over there, and he just made that. And so, well, in the words of his good wife, he's a nerd. And she said that lovingly, didn't you, Kelly? But they make a great team, and Jonathan has been preaching in various roles since 2006. He's a graduate of Tennessee Technology University in 2011, and also the Memphis School of Preaching in 2013. He's married to Kelly, and they have 2 sons, Charlie and Colson. He has served congregations in Tennessee and Mississippi. He also directs the Pulaski Bible Broadcast, which is a local TV channel that they have. He directs the Truth and Love lectureship that they have each year. He's on the executive board of Short Mountain Bible Camp, and he's the minister of the East Hill Church of Christ in Pulaski, Tennessee. He actively participates in gospel meetings and lectureships and mission trips in various parts of the U.S. and also outside the U.S. in such places as China, Philippines, and Singapore. He's recently started the digital mission work. I think he's going to maybe tell us a little bit about that, which has a goal of making digital and print resources for the Lord's church. He's very capable in this area. He really works well in missions. We've been with him many times on mission trips into Singapore, China, other places around. He does a fantastic job, and I'm excited about what he's going to tell us this hour. Brother Jonathan.
I will have to pay Brother Bland whatever he charges after the day is over for that introduction. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you spending time with us today. I, of course, appreciate the invitation to talk about mission work and talk about what we're doing with technology in a variety of places in the world. And I'm glad to be able to do that today. Here's where we'll begin. Bible education works. I'm the product of Bible education. I grew up in a small town named Sparta, Tennessee, really not too far from here in the scope of time of travel. And I was a part of a Bible education program from the time I was born until the time I left and came here to Memphis to study at the Memphis School of Preaching. I'm a product of Bible education. I'm a product of Bible education in the fact that I'm a part and have been a part and a graduate of the Memphis School of Preaching, which is a part of the Bible education program here at the Forest Hill Church of Christ. And my life truly is indebted because I have been a part of Bible education. And the truth is, and it always will be, is Bible education works. And that's what you and I must be involved in, is Bible education. It is our responsibility. It is our job. It is our priority, no matter what we may see as more important, is to spend our times inside of God's Word. A few years ago, matter of fact, about 4 years ago now, this being my 5th trip overseas, I realized that there was a lot more that we could do. I also realized that I could not do that every week of the year. It would be impractical. It would be infeasible. As a matter of fact, we would spend more money doing that every year than what we could do if we started looking into other areas of which we can be involved in. And thus the idea of digital mission work began. How can we, as the Lord's people, take what we're already doing in a local level and turn it into something that can be in a global level? And that's the idea of digital mission work. And the topic that's been assigned to me today is using available technology in planting and in watering. And I have 5 things that I want us to do in our allotted time for this evening. Number 1, I want to look at the context, and we'll look at the words of Jesus for just a moment. Number 2, I want to look at the application, and I want to look at the words of Paul, and you and I look at those together to see what's taking place and to see how we can do this. And then the final 3 parts of our lesson today, I want us to look at the work, the things that we're doing overseas, but not only that, things that we can do right here. Did you know that there are things that you and I can do that in many times will cost us very little money, but that can make a very big difference to what we're doing in our lives and could make a very big difference in the lives of others? Number 4, today I want to look at the future. There are a lot of things that we can do. We've got to take our time to do these things, to do them right. I'm a fan of doing things right the first time. That doesn't always happen. We all try to set out to do that, but with technology comes blunders sometimes, and that happens to all of us in a variety of areas. But there's things we can do in the future. And then finally, I have something entitled The Warning. There's something we need to know, and it'll make a lot of application for us as we go. So let's begin by looking at the context, and go with me to Matthew chapter 28. Matthew chapter 28, as we begin this evening looking at this and looking at the words of Jesus, about what Jesus taught and about what Jesus was saying. And I think all of us can look at Matthew 28, 16 through 20, and look at the words of Jesus, and we can understand this thought. If Jesus said it, it was important. And that means for you and I, it should carry a great amount of weight. And there are a number of things of which he said in Matthew 28, especially 18 through 20, of which will make sense to us. He says, all power is given to me in heaven and earth. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the world. It was Jesus here in this particular setting that was teaching his disciples, was teaching those that were around him of what they need to be involved in, about what they need to be doing. And he tells them here, as you look at this idea of the context of what's happening, as he was talking about himself being there in the moment of which he was, he said some doubted who he was. You know, there's something that's true about all works that exist. There is always, and most likely, and I don't like it that way, but that's how it is, someone who doubts. And can't you imagine it right here? Jesus, he says, and some were doubting. They had seen him before, but now they doubted who he was. Because how could that be? You see, he was the Son of God. He was not like you and me. Because we know who our physical parents are. We know where we came from. But Jesus was much different. And they doubted. And Jesus came, and I love this. He spake unto them. And he told them, you go and you teach. You're going to see a theme in what we're going to look at today, but a lot of what I'm going to talk about is different ways we can teach, because that's the priority. He says you teach, you baptize, and what do you do again? You keep on teaching as you study. And he says teach them to observe, and I love this, all things. You know, for preachers, it's interesting. I like to talk to preachers about this. How do you determine what you're going to preach on Sunday morning? And some people have theories about how they're going to do it and have ways they're going to do it. But here's one of the best things, and here's one of the best answers to that question. How are we going to determine what we're going to teach on Sunday morning? Well, it's right here. It's all things that which we must be concerned about. If we're going to teach and baptize and teach, we must teach all things so that men know what they must do, not just to become a child of God, but to be inside of heaven. Because that's where I want to go, isn't it you? I want to go to heaven. And that means I must want others to go to heaven. And Jesus was telling them here, you teach and you baptize and you teach. And I love what Jesus was doing to these people. He tells them, he gives them comfort that they needed. And it's comfort that you and I can take as well. He says, and lo, I will be with you always, even to the end of the world. Until the world is no longer there, what should be our priority? To teach, to baptize, and to teach, and to know that what we teach, which is all things that Jesus has taught, is going to be the right things. And he's always going to be there. So the context of what we're looking at is the words of Jesus in our mission to go and to teach, to baptize and to teach and to keep on teaching. You see, it's the Word of God that becomes the priority and no longer the man of which becomes the priority. In second place, let's look at the application and what we're doing of what we're looking at. The first thing I want you to look with me is in 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 20 and 21, where Paul is giving an interesting question. He says, who is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this world? Now pause for just a minute. Why was Paul asking where these men were and who they were? Because they weren't there. If you allow me to say it this way, they didn't matter. Because what God has said, that is what matters. He says, hath not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? Pause with me there. There are a lot of things that man has done. And man has done some very wise things. And some of those things help us out tremendously. Think about medical technology. Boy, isn't that a tremendous asset in our lives. We are living longer. We are healthier now. We've got a long way to go. But because of technology in certain areas of our lives have been made better. And man has done some amazing things. Think about architecture for just a minute. Buildings. It's amazing what man can build, isn't it? It's almost as if they're trying to see how high they actually can build a building anymore. And they just keep on building them through the skies. Man can do some amazing things. But when compared to what God has done, what is man? Where's the wisdom of this world? What are all these things having to do with eternity? And the answer is nothing. For after that, in the wisdom of God, the world by the wisdom knew not God. It pleased God by the foolishness of preaching to save them that believe. I love that phrase, the foolishness of preaching. Our world may look down upon Bible preaching. Our world may look down upon preaching no matter what it is. But that's what God sees as a priority, isn't it? The saving of the world comes from what? The preaching of the gospel. And that's what we are commanded to do in what we are looking at here in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and even in Matthew chapter 28 with the words of Jesus. But with the golden text of this particular weekend, with this mission seminar, comes with us in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. And it's in 1 Corinthians 3 verses 1 through 11 that many have talked about the idea of the planting and the watering, and that is the exact concept there. But I want you to follow down with me into another area to see something of which will make great sense to us. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, after you read in verse 6, I have planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. You read these words in 7, 8, and 9. So then neither is he that planteth anything, neither he that watereth, but God that gave the increase. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one, and every man shall receive of his own reward according to his own labor. Listen to this, verse 9. For we are laborers together with God. Ye are God's husbandry, ye are God's building. I love the concept and the idea inside of verse 9. You and I are laboring together. Brother Curtis Cates always said this about schools of preaching while I was here. He said, lighthouses do not compete. And the same is true with mission work, isn't it? We are laborers together. What's the end goal of all mission works, of all local and overseas mission works? It's to bring souls into heaven, isn't it? And there is no competition in that. Because here's the reality, as Brother Bland and Brother Clark and others have talked about this weekend. You and I are not the priority. We are the ones that plant. We are the ones that water, but who? But God. And we are laborers together. Look at this, verse 9. We are laborers together with God. And therefore, we're not competing with God. We are not competing with one another, but we are set out to complement one another. And that's the application that I believe is also in this text. For you and I to know that we are in His control, and to know, verse 11, that God is in control. For no other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Jesus Christ. We're not going to come up with anything new. We're not going to come up with more eloquent words than are in the Scriptures. We're not going to come up with a new way to save man. God has already determined that. But you and I will be the ones who plant and water, and the way we do that can vary. In Matthew 28:18-20, Jesus told them to go, but He didn't tell them how to go, did He? How many of you would ride a horse to go preach the gospel? I would struggle with that. I'm not a big fan of horses. I am at distances, and that is great. But if you ever see me on a horse, and it is just booking it, you know something is disastrously wrong and you need to leave. But we use planes and now we use technology and all of these things of which we can use to further the gospel, to labor together. And that's the point, the application of this. The idea is God is in control. Jesus Christ, the foundation is already there, but you and I must labor together to make things work. That's why I believe Paul, when he was writing to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 16, told Timothy something that I believe is very important. He said, take heed unto thyself and into doctrine, continue in them, for in doing this, thou shalt both save thyself and them that hear thee. You see, preaching has always been in the plan of God. And our mission, our goal, our work is to go, is to teach, is to labor, listen to this, together with God, together with each other, to help others come into the salvation that's found because of the Scriptures, not because of our ideas, not because of our mentalities, not because of what we would want to do. And thus that brings us to the work. How can you and I use technology to help ourselves as we live, to help ourselves in the mission of spreading the gospel? And to do that, I want to look at 3 different areas that will help us understand technology and how we can better use it. Number 1, I want to look at the fields, and I believe that's important to help us understand what we are doing and what we must be doing. Number 2, I want to look at the ways, and this is where we're going to look at a variety of ways of which you can use technology to further what you're doing in the local work and in the overseas type work that you're doing. Everything that we should do should be mission work, isn't that true? We should be on a mission. And then I want to look at an area that's entitled the brain. My wife called me a nerd, and that's okay. It's true. But she always proofs my PowerPoint. And she said, the brain. I said, it'll make sense later. Just hang with me. We'll talk about the brain in just a moment. Let's talk about the mission fields. I believe there are 5 different mission fields as indicated inside of Scripture that will help you and I. Number 1, and probably for us, sometimes the most overlooked mission field is the home. I am blessed to have 2 children. One is 4 and one is 1. And I want nothing more than my boys to go to heaven. I will fail in this life if that does not happen. The home, it's the very first place. It's where we start. Because I'm convinced if we will get our homes right, the church will be in a working order like it's never been before. The first mission field is the home. The second is the church, because mission work does not just get done to those who need to hear the gospel, it's to those that love the gospel. One of my favorite songs in our books is I Love to Tell the Story. And one of those lines says, I love to tell the story to those who know it best. One of the greatest fields that we get to work in is in buildings just like this all across the world. Hebrews 10:24, let us. And the whole idea of Hebrews 10, 24, 25, and 26 is finding ways so that we can do more, so that we can be encouraged, so that we can go to heaven. Number 3, I believe the mission field is the wayward. Now I picked Galatians 6:2, bear ye one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ for this passage. because there are so many occasions where our brethren are hurting in sin and need help. We so often want to just walk out of those doors and pray for them at home. I tell you, praying for folks at home is the easy way, isn't it? That's so simple. Working with a young man right now who has come out of drug addiction, is the father of 2 children. He can't get married to the mother. It would be unscriptural. They are doing their best to make this work. He had a relapse recently. He came on a Wednesday night to repent. It would be easy to pray for him, wouldn't it, on a Wednesday night and let that be it? But that can't be it, is it? Because if we only bear our burdens here, we're only doing at a maximum on an average week, 4 hours a week to those that we know that are lost that are still in our midst. And what is 4 hours a week? It's nothing, is it? The wayward. I believe the community is another mission field, the local field of which we are in, and how we can go from house to house, from door to door, and to work with those of which we're around. Because the truth is, you may not ever go to the entire other side of the world, but you can go in your community, can't you? You can walk across the street from your home. Answer this question for me, and I'll answer it as you answer it. But if you ever walk to the other side of your street, I'd like to invite you to the gospel meeting. You'll have to determine the answer to that, and so will I. But that's right across the street from where you are most comfortable in your home. You see, the community is one of the mission fields. And then there is the world. The world of which is so far around us sometimes and seems so far from us. But guess what? As much as you and I need the gospel, as our children need the gospel, as the local congregation, the wayward, and the person across the street, so do the people in the world. I've been privileged to be in the Philippines a number of times, and I love going over there. It's a place filled with poverty. It's a place that many times can be dirty, and it's a place that many times has been dangerous. I've come to find, and actually recently come to find out, the place I've been staying is one of the more dangerous areas of the city, and they just now told me. So I'm going to change that the next time I am there. But it's interesting to me that you can spend 6 hours on a Tuesday evening presenting a Bible class on the book of Colossians, and after you get finished, you think, boy, it's time to go. And after 3 hours of questions, they're not done. And they took off of work. They rode a train for 2 hours, and they walked after they got off the train for about 30 minutes. And after 6 hours of Bible class, what did they do? Tim's seen that. And yet, listen to me, I'm not trying to be mean when I say this, but many times we have a hard time getting there on Wednesday night. And they'll spend 9 hours just asking questions and wanting to know more and wanting you to do more. The world is a mission field of which needs you and I to work in it. But here's the deal. Technology is not a scary word. Now, it can be, and you're right, it can be misused, it can be abused. But think about this, so can the printing press. So can the printing press. So can a building be misused in sinful ways. But technology is not a scary word. Technology is a word that you and I must understand in its completeness. And what I want to do is I want to break this up into 2 areas in our ways. Let's look at local work and let's look at overseas work to see what you and I can do. Now, locally, here's how you can use technology in 3 basic areas: radio, television, and internet. We use local radio where I'm at. And we use radio for 30 minutes, 28 and a half minutes is our program, every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. You can find us at 100.9 WKSR every Sunday morning. Costs us $125 for 28 and a half minutes. But you know what's interesting about this? If our program fails to air, people call the radio station and people call the church building upset, wanting to know what we did wrong. And we're worried that people aren't listening. I didn't find this out, and I questioned this for a long time. Am I wasting my time doing this? And then the program didn't air 3 weeks in a row because of a technological problem. And we found out that what we were doing is what we should be doing because people were listening. You can do that. And that's simple. You can sit at your desk with a digital microphone and you can put that together in ease. And it won't cost you a dime once you buy the microphone. The program's free. Just paying for the airtime. And you can get people after you develop it over time. East Hill has been on the radio almost 45 years. I think it's closer to 50, but I can't get anybody to confirm that for me. It makes a difference. You can be on television in your local area. We decided a few years ago that we wanted to get on television and we wanted to have our radio program to also be a television program and double down on what we were doing in our work. Well, we started investigating how we're going to do that. What's that going to be? Because the truth is the cost varies. It can vary anywhere from $1,000 for 30 minutes or $50 for 30 minutes, depending on where you're at. We were in an area where we were blessed to say, hey, we would just like to buy a TV channel. So guess what they let us do? They let us buy a TV channel. Now, we spend some money every month keeping that equipment up, but it doesn't cost us a dime outside of that equipment to put anything we want on a local market. And every person who has the local cooperatives channel, which is most of our community, has channel 22, and that's us. Our radio program is a TV program. Our services are live. When you're in the hospital, you have a church service to attend. When you're in the nursing home, you can still be a part of a church service because you can turn it on and everything is there for you. So we just bought the channel. Didn't cost us a dime to buy it. All we had to do is take care of the equipment. And really, in the scope of things, it wasn't that bad. So our equipment sits in a room like this. Matter of fact, this is the room that our equipment sits in, and here it is. And everything we do, we never have to touch the equipment. Unless something catastrophically goes wrong, we never have to go and touch it. I make a yearly inspection, and that's all I do. And it runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We partnered with GBN. They're our backbone. When we're not on, they are on. And we complement their schedule. We don't overturn things like the call-in program. We don't overturn certain things to make sure it can have the best benefit, but we have local programming for local people, and it's made a difference. Matter of fact, thinking about the radio program and the television program, it's called Walking with the Word, and this is the new set that we just finished building, and it's been in effect for a few weeks. The general manager of our local radio station stopped by the office one day and wanted to talk. He just wanted to talk about the program he had told me. I said, okay, come by. So we talked, and he left, and I saw him out in town a few days later and said, come by again, let's talk again. And we baptized him that day. And he said something that was drastically interesting to me. He said, you're the only group on the radio, and every denomination in the city of I'm in is on the radio. He said, you're the only one, the Churches of Christ, that does not mishandle the Bible. People are listening. If you're willing to get out there and do. So we built an entire studio. It also, once again, it sounds expensive, but it doesn't have to be. The majority of this was purchased by an individual who wanted to put some money toward the program to build everything that we wanted to do. And now we have it fully set up, and we use it every week, day in and day out, week after week. You see, you can get on the television and you can preach on the television just as much as you preach at the congregation. And your local community most likely will support you because they've never had anything like that. They've never had access to something like this. And they can, all because you're willing to do this. You can also be on the internet. I'm convinced that every one of us should be on the internet in some way, some form, some fashion. Every congregation should have a website. At least tell where you're at, where you're located, and when you're going to meet. Because whether we like it or not, when we go places, where is the first place we go to look something up? You're wanting to find something to eat, what do? You get on your phone and you Google the word food in Germantown or food in Collierville, and you use Google Maps to your advantage. Every one of us should be. And the same is true with types of like this. You can take your programs and put them online. We have an average monthly view of 3,500. We have inside of what we're doing 6 states who averagely watch and 6 different countries who averagely watch our Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night services consecutively. We've had people from 3 different states call us, 2 about problems with marriage. One was a lady who knew she needed to leave her husband because it was an unscriptural marriage. She never did. One was a husband with 4 children. He was in the same scenario, and he made it right because he Googled marriage, divorce, and remarriage, and we had just preached on that. And he studied through that, and he called us, and we talked for hours about that, all because of the internet that did not cost us a dime. That's something you and I can do. Every one of us can do this in a local way. Now, overseas, we use technology as well, and we do it in a couple of different ways. Number 1, we use hard copies. Number 2, we use USB drives. And number 3, we use live streaming. Now, overseas, we do DVD and print media in what I call hard copy. If I can hand it to you, it is a hard copy. You have it, that's yours, hard copy. Last year, we made DVD sets for the Four Seas Bible College lectureship live in production. As soon as the last one ended, we had it together in about 40 minutes, the entire set. And they were able to take these and use them in a variety of ways. But remember that because we're going to talk about that in just a minute. So we set up kind of a mobile command center in Singapore. And as these series came in, we built the production. We did it all right here at this desk and made it all work and put it all together, all while in a completely different country. It would take teams to do this, but we found a way to do it in smaller scale, which made it obtainable to you and I. Because we tried different methods here before we got there to make it small scale. Matter of fact, the whole operation could sit on this podium. You can do that if you want to. We use different ways. We use USB drives. As a matter of fact, I have one of them here with me. This was the very first version we produced of this for the Four Seas Bible College and Missions. And we used a different technique because we decided that what we wanted to do, instead of having the school produce a bunch of resources to put on a thumb drive, we would reach out to all the brotherhood works that we know that which we could agree to let us use their materials, lectureship books, different writings, different things of which can fit on a USB drive, because the goal was, let's get these to the preachers throughout the world and give them a digital library of which they've never had. You and I have libraries and we're blessed with books, but that's not always the case in the world. They cannot have 10 shelves of books, but they can have one of these. And they can take it with them everywhere they go. And matter of fact, they can plug it in their phones and view these books on their phones, and they've got them there. So we built a resource package, and we sent these drives into 10 different nations. Technology. You could have not sent the 870 plus resources in print form into 10 different nations. We couldn't afford it. But for about $4, we could. For $4, we sent 870 books, resources, videos, you name it, and they loved it. The Memphis School of Preaching was involved in this. So was the Truth and Love Lectureship, of which I am blessed to direct, the Spiritual Sword Lectureship, the Church Lectureship, the entire back catalog of the Gospel Journal was there, and a variety of other resources all went into 10 different nations just like that. Well, those are things you want in your digital library, aren't they? Now, I can't give these to you. I made a commitment when I created these that I would never give them out in the United States, that I would only give them out overseas because there's a great need there. You and I can buy books, but they can't. And we're blessed beyond what we know. This year, this thumb drive will get an update, and they will be able to get on our website, download the entire update package, put it on their thumb drive, and now they've got an update with everything that's been updated throughout this last year, plus a number of other resources of which people have said, yeah, you can put that on there. And we're going to keep doing that every year, year after year, so that they can have more materials written by sound brethren, and it doesn't cost them a dime. This year, as we go to the Four Seas College, we're going to start streaming in a different way. Here's Billy Bland a few years ago. I believe this was 2 years ago. But what we're going to do is we go over there this year, we're going to take some new equipment with us that's never been produced before. Matter of fact, it's not coming out until November the 1st. I've got to have it within 2 weeks. And we're cutting it close. They tell me it will be here on time. of which we're going to be able to take an entire camera package from our studio, an entire graphics package with us on a tablet about this big, and do a full live production studio switching of their entire lectureship. So just like here, you'll have multiple cameras. You'll have multiple inputs. Every PowerPoint will be there. So the person that's at home, the person that's in the nation, the person that's across the street will be able to see everything that you and I see as if we're sitting there. You see, overseas it's a much different world. We live in a world that's smaller scale, and they live in a world that's much bigger. You see, things like this, like the I Dream to Lead program that's in the Philippines, we can speak to things that we never were able to do. 2 years ago, I spoke at Four Seas, and some people from the Philippines were there. They are part of the Green Plains Church of Christ there in the Philippines. And they heard me talk, and a segment of one of my lessons was about parenting and about children. And I talked about my children and how that if I failed, it was my fault. If they were not in heaven, that it was my fault, and how we must take every opportunity to teach our children in whatever it costs you and I. So they started the I Dream to Lead program. They've already baptized 6 of their young folks. And they invited me to be able to pre-record. Thankfully, they let me pre-record it. I would have had to have gotten up at 4:30 to speak to them. So they let me pre-record it and give kind of a lesson on their I Dream to Lead moving up ceremony. And they were able to watch, as a part of their program, someone teach about the Bible and about what's going on. So it's the work. Let's talk about the brain. You've got to know who you're working with and understand what they can use. Do you remember those DVDs we made? That was a long week. And here's what I learned. It wasn't the right move. It was not the right move. You know what they need? It was right in front of me. I took them that year. You know, they don't use DVDs as much as we do. Now, they're getting used. Granted, that's good. But you know what they need? They don't need DVDs. You've got to know who you're working with and what they can use, not what we can use. I took an American idea, the DVD, and said, this will work over there. It wasn't what they needed. You see, they're a little bit more advanced than we are, and they would rather just plug it into their phone or their tablet or computer or their TV at home and watch every series that you can give them. So soon, we're going to be releasing these of the entire lectureship overseas as we can. You've got to use your brain. Sometimes you get it right. But sometimes you apply an American idea to overseas, and it sounds great, it seems great, and you're excited about it, and they're thankful. But it's not really what they need. It's not really what they can do. So here's the future. Technology is not a scary word. It's not. But it is always changing, and that is the scary part. And that's the part that's going to allow us this year to do things that we've never been able to do, because now they're making an entire switch in a box that's this size that I can carry with me. I'd have to take my entire studio rack overseas if I wanted to do it this year without that little device. But see, technology is always changing. What we're going to do is we're releasing a correspondence course that'll be 6 lessons, and it's all going to be right here. We're going to do it in DVD form for over here, but everything we use overseas, we're sending it on these. Every video lesson will be there. Every book they use, every printout will be there. They can download it on their smartphone. They'll be able to answer it on their smartphone. A digital device with an app. We're creating what we call a digital learning center. We're hoping to build the first one in the Philippines. The building is already going up. And what we want to do is give them a smart device of which they can go and watch resources produced to help them as preachers be better. Centralized location in which they can learn, a digital school of encouragement, a learning center of which they cannot have right now because they don't have it. And if the trend goes, they never will. But they can because of the works of technology that exist. We're hoping to put the first one in the Philippines, and we're hoping to be able to finish that up very soon. Matter of fact, if you visit the display, there is a list of things of which you can do, and we're looking for 400 congregations to give $200. We can do that, can't we? We can all give $200, can't we? To help finish this out and to make a digital learning center possible so that people can come, even members can come and study of videos that are already done. We're just creating a library for them. We're not doing a gross amount of works. We're creating something so it's all in one area for them, ready to go. And thus we can. We want to build a Bible study app. Did you know that 96% of Americans right now own a smartphone. And yet there is zero Bible study apps out there. Can you believe that? There are Bible study apps out there that contain every idea among the sun. But where are we at? We're missing that boat right now. The future is in the world, there's 265 million people right now who have smartphones, or in the United States, 285 by 2023. Inside of the world, there are 3.3 billion people with smartphones, and by 2021, 3.8 billion. The 0.8 doesn't seem bigger, but remember, that's billion with a B. That's not million with an M. And that's in the world. We're planning books and video sources that'll go just like this right here so that we can create them. Fundamentals to help the Lord's church overseas so that they can have them for free, not going to cost them a dime. We've already got the first one put together. Know the Scriptures, 10 burning questions. We're working on categorizing that out now as we go. But here's the warning. It's very simple. Did you ever know the man or hear about the missionary who wanted the ATV? He had reasoned within himself, oh man, I will get me an ATV. I am riding my bicycle, I'm walking, I'm doing all this, and this will make my life better. Well, for a while it did. Boy, he rode that thing everywhere he needed to go, and he was able to get more work done until he started having to pay for the gas. And boy, it got expensive. So he started slowing down his use, and he was just using a little bit when he really had to until it broke. And then he needed parts of which he could not have. And now he has gas he cannot use. And he's back to riding his bicycle. Do you know what that really tells you and I? Don't be complicated. I know for some of you and for many, this seems complicated. We made 200 of them within 30 minutes. I know there are other things that may seem complicated, and some of them are, and some of them can be, but don't be complicated in what we do. There's things that we can do. But here's the real warning. Don't give up. Don't give up. Look at all that you can do. You will fail. You will do something and realize that was not the best way to do it. But don't give up. Because it's so easy to give up, isn't it? But it is much harder to keep going. But here's the reality. Remember what Jesus said? To teach, to baptize, and teach. And lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the end of you, the world. That's our obligation, to continue as we go, to live as we go, and to use the different ways. There are so many things that we can do, so many things that we should do, and let us work at it. Let us build toward it and use the technology. Because here's the reality. Technology is not going away. It's not happening. I love technology, and sometimes I wish for easier days. I remember the day before I had a cell phone. I wish I did not have a cell phone. But it's not going away. That is not going to change. And there are 3.3 billion people in the world of which we could contact right now if we wanted to, if we're willing to. There's 250 million in our society of which we could do something about if we wanted to. Television and radio is everywhere, even overseas, if we wanted to. The internet goes everywhere, though it's censored in some places, if we wanted to. And what's going to be next? It's always changing. What's going to be next? What's going to be the next thing of which we could use to teach, to bring people into baptism, and to keep teaching them until they get to heaven? That's the goal. I want to go to heaven, don't you? I want the world to go to heaven. But we're never going to get the world to go to heaven unless we realize